The story starts with Diaz introducing himself. He says he owns a big area of land that goes on for as far as you can see, but this land only has grass on it. He remembers a time when his mom told him to be the kind of person who helps others. This was the last thing she asked of him. His dad also told him to protect people who can't protect themselves. And that was his last wish too. Because Diaz lost his parents when he was young, he really focused on doing what they asked. He wanted to make sure he lived in a way that would make them proud. He then talks about how, when he was 15, a war started with another country next to his. Wanting to honor what his parents wanted for him and to protect his people, he joined the fight. This war went on for 20 years, a very long time. By the time Diaz was 35, the fighting stopped because both countries agreed to peace. They decided not to fight anymore. And this was a big moment for Diaz. He felt he did what his parents wanted and also played a part in bringing peace. In a quiet moment, the hero of our story found himself being celebrated everywhere as a hero for loving his country. This was likely because he was pretty good at fighting in battles and did some amazing things that others couldn't. The king praised him a lot, even more than he maybe should have, and started talking about giving him a vast land to look after. People thought the hero couldn't read and only knew how to fight. At first, he didn't really get what was happening, but then it was explained to him that he was going to be a lord, looking after people on his land and sending some money to the king as part of his job. Feeling a bit unsure, the hero quickly packed up his things in a carriage pulled by horses and went off to see his new land. He didn't have much time to get ready before leaving the big city, and a government person came with him to make sure everything went smoothly. When they told him they had arrived, he stepped out of the carriage and looked around. The government person showed him where his land was, which was basically a huge area covered in grass. The person said this land was perfect for him, especially since he had no family and he could do whatever he wanted there. The hero asked if this place was called Netros and if he could be called Diaz from now on. And just like that, he became Diaz Netros, the lord of this big, grassy place, after the officials left. The hero was happy because he found clean water instead of having to use dirty water during the war. He walked a lot but didn't see any trees, only grass, which he thought might be good to eat. But when he tried it, it tasted awful. He decided to wait until morning to figure out how to avoid dying in such a lonely place. He told himself he'd try for 2 more days, and if it didn't work, he'd leave to help others, following his parents' last wish. While he was sleeping, someone woke him up. He was surprised to see a girl with a horn and wondered if she was human. She asked who he was and why he was there. He said his name was Diaz and he was just sleeping. The girl then questioned him about why he chose to sleep in such an unusual location. Diaz responded by saying there wasn't really any other place for him to sleep. When the girl questioned what circumstances led him to arrive in that plane, he politely informed her that he was instructed to do so. Upon being asked if he was foolish, Diaz admitted that he couldn't entirely deny being somewhat foolish if he were to be truthful. She probed further about his purpose there, to which he replied that, fundamentally, his goal was to live and not die. This response greatly irritated the girl, and just as she was about to attack him, he prevented her from doing so. As she pressed him for a sincere answer, questioning if he wished to become a target, he assured her he had been sincere all along. Throughout their interaction, Diaz attempted to convey his earnestness, despite the girl's growing frustration and skepticism towards his explanation. The main character said he wanted to do what his parents wished before they died, help people around him and look out for those not as strong as him. When she asked why he doesn't like lying, he simply said he saw no reason to lie to her. When faced with the question of being a friend or enemy, he was confused. It seemed odd to him that someone would ask that when they had just met. Thinking it over, he suggested maybe he was neither a friend nor an enemy, but she insisted he had to choose. Thinking about why she cared so much about his answer, he remembered it was his land they were on, and technically, that made her one of his people. But then he realized she was really asking him to take a stand, to be a clear friend and protector for someone living on his land. So, he told her he would always be her friend and keep her safe from anyone who might want to harm her. Right after he said this, a surprising blue light shone from the girl's horn, leaving both of them shocked. She couldn't believe it and thought it must be a mistake because such things just don't happen. Diaz was suddenly taken by her hand, and she said she would take him to her village right away. This confused the main character because he didn't think there was a village in that empty area. She told him to quietly come with her. When they got to the village, he was really surprised. He had walked all day and didn't see anything, especially not a village that was so well made. Then she said they were going to see the village leader. When she brought him into a big room, someone shouted out that Aruna had brought someone new to them. The leader wanted to know if she had checked if this man was safe. She told him that she found the man sleeping and asked him many questions when he woke up. But the man didn't want to answer much and kept asking questions that didn't help. She tried to find out if he was a friend or an enemy. Then, a blue light showed up around him. The leader was curious about the blue light and asked why it wasn't red. The girl responded by saying that it was completely blue, which caught the chief's interest. Intrigued, the chief inquired about Diaz's name. And when he introduced himself as Diaz, the chief commented on how his name carried a mysterious vibe. She then went on to ask him if he was willing to become her friend, in the same way he had with Aruna. The protagonist excitedly shared that he had finally learned the young woman's name was Aruna. He told everyone in the fiefdom that since they were all subjects of the realm, they would naturally be his friends. When the chief inquired how this could be, the protagonist explained that it was his responsibility. Upon being asked by the chief which territory he was assigned this duty, he responded that it was by the king's decree. Aruna, feeling threatened, aimed her bow at Diaz, causing him to feel frightened. The chief calmed Diaz, urging him to explain how he came to receive such orders from the king. Initially confused by the chief's question, the protagonist began recounting his story from childhood, leading the chief to understand why he was so remarkably distinct, glowing in blue. She hadn't expected someone so unique to exist outside of those with horns. Recognizing him as the feudal lord destined to protect his subjects with all his might, she questioned him on his stance if they were not his subjects. Confused at first, the protagonist admitted he would still offer neighborly assistance when needed, suggesting a foundation for friendship. However, he was puzzled by the notion of them not being his subjects since it was his fiefdom, and logically, everyone within it was under his domain. The chief clarified that while they might not be his subjects, potentially being seen as enemies due to long-standing conflicts with his kingdom, there was still a possibility for friendship rather than enmity. The chief told Diaz that because he had a very special shade of blue, he could stay peacefully with them. She then told him to look up and asked if he wanted to hear their story. When she started telling her story, she said her name was Moro and she was the leader of the Oni people. She explained that her people and Diaz's country had been fighting over the land for a long time, which led to many fights and wars over 50 years, ending with her people losing badly and many of them dying. They were forced to leave the land, which made Diaz wonder how she could still be there if they were kicked out 50 years ago. Moro explained that their horns had magic in them that let them do things others couldn't, like making people and things invisible so no one could see them. Using this magic, they came back to the land and lived there without the king knowing. Diaz thought it was a really interesting story and asked if she should be telling him all this since he was under the king's rule. The chief told Diaz a story because he was the man of blue, and she wouldn't have shared it if he wasn't. She talked about a special magic called Judgment of the Soul that could tell if someone had bad feelings in their heart. If they did, it would show up as red. But for Diaz, this never happened. She then asked Diaz if he thought it was normal for a son to follow his parents' last wish. She said she had lived a long time but had never met someone as foolish as him. However, she also said it was lucky for them that such a foolish person became the Lord of the Plains because their secret magic wasn't strong enough to hide everything. Diaz asked why they didn't just move somewhere peaceful instead of staying on the plain. The chief asked him back if he could leave his home and the Mia animals behind. The Mias ate a lot of grass, which was only found on the plain, so it was hard to think about leaving. She told him to take good care of his people and be a good lord. If he didn't, they weren't sure who would be the next lord. When asked by the protagonist about his predecessor, the chief explained that there indeed was one, but suggested that his presence was elsewhere due to his foolish and evil indulgences. The predecessor, it seemed, had passed away from a disease quite some time ago. The chief acknowledged the protagonist's need for shelter and provisions, offering assistance and even a share of their limited livestock. In return, the chief requested that the protagonist keep the village's existence secret from those in the capital, including the king he served. She permitted him to utilize Aruna's help, with Aruna being tasked with teaching him how to thrive in the plains. Thus, the protagonist began his journey as a feudal lord, living with Aruna under circumstances that necessitated her guidance and support, as she was responsible for his well-being due to having introduced him to their community. Aruna was explaining to Diaz about a type of animal called me. She described how Mies have 2 horns and are entirely covered in soft, fluffy wool. Aruna emphasized that people keep Mies not for their meat, but for their wool. She added that Mies grow wool faster when they eat more grass. This wool can then be taken to the village to trade for food and other things. When Diaz just nodded in response, Aruna seemed to get angry. She asked him why he seemed uninterested in what she was saying. Diaz assured her that he did understand. Continuing her explanation, Aruna talked about how to take care of Mies, including dealing with wild animals. She stressed that there was a lot to learn to properly care for them. Despite any initial reluctance, Aruna wanted Diaz to grasp all the details of keeping Mies alive. The leader of the village had promised to send some Mies to Diaz as a sign of trust. Diaz wanted to do well and increase the Mii population. He asked Aruna how he could make the Mies have more babies. Aruna appeared annoyed and told him he was missing the point because he didn't have his own people to count. She explained that worrying about the population was not the immediate concern. Aruna pointed out that just having more people wouldn't help if there wasn't enough food or if everyone got sick. Diaz then realized he had been hoping for more help from the village if there were more people. Aruna warned him not to expect that. Diaz acknowledged his oversight. He agreed with Aruna that before thinking about more people, he needed to ensure they had enough places to live and enough food. Aruna referred to Diaz as Lord Dumbo and handed him a bag. He asked her what was in it, and she replied that it contained ground matabi, a grass loved by wild animals. She told him that if he spread it, the animals would come running. She also informed him that if he hunted those animals, he could get meat, skins, and horns, which he could then take back to the village to trade for provisions and more yurts. She suggested that by engaging in hunting, he could lay the foundation for his new fiefdom. Diaz claimed he was good at hunting because it didn't require much thought. Aruna advised him to keep the wind at his back and walk until he couldn't see the village, warning that using the matabi too close to the village might cause trouble with the animals. Diaz chose a spot but was unsure how much matabi to use. Aruna didn't give much detail on that, simply saying, "When in doubt, use it all." Diaz exclaimed to himself that now he only had to wait for the animals to come. He wondered how many he would need to barter for a yurt. He realized it couldn't be just 1 or 10, maybe 100. He exclaimed that it would take him more than one day to get 100. Diaz found himself surprised by the sudden rush of animals heading towards him. He couldn't figure out where they had all come from in the plain. However, he saw an opportunity. If he could gather them all, he might reach his goal in one go. His plan was simple: swing his battle axe with all his might, relying solely on his instinct. It wasn't much of a strategy, though. As a volunteer, he had been trained to use swords and bows, but targeting specific weak spots in armor or predicting opponents' moves seemed too complicated for him. So, he stuck to what he knew best, the battle axe, which proved to be remarkably effective. He didn't need to worry about the details, he just fought. Shields or armor, it didn't matter, they all met the same fate. As the remaining animals fled, Diaz estimated he had taken down about half of them. It was relatively easy since their movements were predictable. However, his triumph turned to concern when he realized he had no plan for moving the dead animals. He could only carry them one by one, and he hadn't thought about how to transport them back. He berated himself for not considering the logistics before swinging his axe recklessly. He dreaded the teasing he'd receive from the girl, who would surely call him Dumbo again. Amidst his worries, Diaz couldn't shake the feeling that no one could withstand the girl's gaze. On the contrary, when Aruna observed Diaz carrying a bull, she remarked that it wasn't bad and he had gotten a black buffalo. Upon his very first hunt, she acknowledged that it seemed pretty masculine. Diaz was confused, wondering if that was what they called a black buffalo. He then explained that he managed to get about half of the ones that came running, but he couldn't transport them all. Aruna inquired about the number of buffaloes they were discussing, to which Diaz informed her there were around 30 or 40 of them. Aruna and the chief were amazed upon hearing this and exclaimed that it was awesome to see him in a different light. The chief mentioned that Diaz had done really well, not wasting any time displaying his masculinity. Aruna chimed in, mentioning she had never seen a guy with that much masculinity before, and suggested calling other guys to help him carry his buffalo so they could retrieve them. The chief commented that Diaz was certainly powerful, as hunting 30 black buffaloes at once was indeed a splendid display of masculinity. The chief was asked by the protagonist what masculinity truly meant, as it seemed different from its general use. The chief attempted to explain that masculinity referred to being masculine, embodying the qualities of a hardworking, dependable, and resourceful man. These traits combined formed masculinity. Understanding this, the protagonist noticed a change in Aruna's attitude towards him for the better. Aruna considered him a proper man of the tribe, appreciating his display of masculinity. The protagonist expressed his realization that displaying masculinity gained favor with women. The chief pondered what other response would be suitable. As for women, masculinity was the primary criterion. The protagonist questioned if other factors like physical attractiveness or eloquence mattered. The chief dismissed these notions, emphasizing the importance of masculinity for survival and the well-being of future generations. Anything other than masculinity held no value to the women of the tribe. The protagonist admitted that different cultures have different perspectives on common sense, values, and worth. While still contemplating masculinity, the chief asked if he desired marriage with Aruna, then he must prepare the bride price. Confused by the concept of the bride price, he was told that Aruna's beauty and skills warranted a high price. The chief suggested that all he hunted that day might be a fair sum for Aruna's marriage, which surprised the protagonist. He wondered if he could marry Aruna with that amount, but the chief insisted he must follow proper steps as per custom. The protagonist found the Oni folks' views on marriage scary but realized it wasn't the time for such discussions. He needed to focus on increasing his subjects. The chief reassured him that even those without horns were fertile and could bear many children, but the protagonist clarified that wasn't his concern. The next morning, when Diaz woke up, Aruna greeted him with a good morning and had already made his breakfast, which tasted delicious. She then inquired about when he planned to begin the day's hunt. He responded, thinking they had enough from the previous day, but asked if there was anything else they needed. Aruna mentioned that if they were to gather more people, they would require a well, a storehouse, and equipment for managing the water supply. She acknowledged they could hire craftsmen from the village, but noted they would need more to barter for their services. After some discussion, Diaz agreed to hunt more black buffaloes. However, Aruna advised against it, stating the village had less need for them now. Instead, she suggested hunting monsters. Diaz expressed his concerns about monsters, describing them as a festering presence emerging unexpectedly from natural disturbances or ancient ruins. Aruna proposed hunting monsters for their various useful parts, such as their skin, nails, horns, and demon stone found near their hearts, despite their poisonous flesh. Diaz asked Aruna if there were any monsters nearby. Aruna replied that there weren't many, but there could be some if he searched. She mentioned she could use magic to find them quickly if he brought her along. However, he declined her offer, saying hunting was dangerous and not like a fun day out. He then asked her to give him directions to find the monsters. Instead of telling him directly, she suggested that if she joined him, it would be like having a fun day at the park. When Diaz left his barn, he greeted me, a gift from the matriarch given to them. Me consisted of a male named Francis and a female named Francois. Suddenly, Diaz spotted some villagers and wondered if they were bringing the goods he had bartered for the black buffaloes. He felt concerned about his appearance, fearing he might look unkempt. Then, Aruna announced that her preparations were complete. Diaz turned to look at her and noticed her makeup was different from usual. He guessed she changed it because of him. She stepped forward and informed him that she had asked the guys to look after me so they could spend the whole day together. Diaz thought to himself that they should get the monsters before something happened to him. When Diaz and Aruna got to the place in the northern plains where monsters show up sometimes, people knew it was a spot where you might run into monsters now and then. Diaz said excitedly that once they picked up useful stuff from a monster or two, they'd have enough to make a well and a big storage room. Aruna told him not to worry because she'd use her magic to find the monster. She wasn't just good at keeping the house tidy, she was also really good at using magic. The main character was okay with this, and she started to cast her magic spells. Soon after, she shouted out that she found the monsters, but noticed one was really big. She guessed that the big monster was probably the reason there were no other monsters around. Diaz then figured that the big monster must be a tough one. He told Aruna to find a safe spot to hide for a little while as he would go ahead to check things out by himself. Diaz was told by Aruna that she was going with him because she knew obscurement magic to disappear if things got too tough with a monster they might meet. She said obscurement magic would help them get away safely. Agreeing with her, the hero let her join him. When they saw the monsters, the protagonist thought one was a big turtle, but Aruna quickly said it was actually an earth dragon, wondering why such a monster was there. Diaz didn't think much about why it was there and got ready to fight it. He told Aruna to hide, but she told him he was being silly because the monster was an earth dragon, not something easy to fight. She said they couldn't beat an earth dragon, but Diaz said it was okay and they could run away if things got too hard because he thought the monster was just a big turtle and wouldn't chase them. It was thought by Diaz that the action could be repeated numerous times. However, he came to realize the potential for things to take an unexpected turn. In anticipation of this, he prepared his weapon and cast some spells, confident that it would catch people off guard. His certainty stemmed from an observation he made when he first acquired his battle axe, a war trophy from a man he had defeated. This man hailed from a neighboring country and had been in possession of a shotgun, or something similar. The axe had the unique ability to repair minor damages on its own, a process that occurred automatically. Nevertheless, Diaz found that if he mentally chanted renewing, the axe would repair itself even faster, making it ready for use again swiftly. As the second round approached, Diaz realized he was facing a difficult situation and was not achieving any success against the shell. With the arrival of night, there was no option left but to retreat. The protagonist was disheartened by the thought that he was unable to defeat what seemed to be just an overgrown tortoise. Suddenly, Diaz noticed that Aruna was shaking, which led him to wonder if something was wrong with her, perhaps she was cold. He thought about quitting, but just as he was about to make up his mind, Aruna saw that he had managed to break through the monster's shell, even though the monster had attacked him badly. Despite being far away, the Earth Dragon's magical miasma was affecting her, yet she was surprised to find Diaz unaffected by it. Diaz, meanwhile, was puzzled as to why the turtle monster wasn't attacking him, but he didn't dwell on it and continued to attack the crack in the shell he had found. This was the first time anyone had breached the monster's protective shell. However, Diaz noticed his movements were stiffer and his aim was not as good as before, suggesting he was confused. If things continued this way, he believed he would be able to defeat the turtle monster. Suddenly, Aruna was attacked by the monster and got hurt. After that, Diaz realized that the turtle wanted to hurt Aruna, not him. Because Diaz was her friend, he knew he had to protect her. Angry, Diaz fought hard and beat the monster. Right away, he ran to Aruna. who was crying like a little kid, and she said she wanted to marry him. By then, the people from their village had come to check on them because they were worried when Aruna and Diaz didn't come back on time. They decided to look for them. Seeing the earth dragon beaten surprised everyone. While Diaz tried to calm Aruna down, she held onto him very tightly, as strong as a dragon, making Diaz tell her to let go a bit. He quietly thought to himself that he couldn't get free no matter how hard he tried. The corpse of the earth dragon was met with excitement by the villagers, who began chanting in excitement. It was said among them that Diaz had conquered the earth dragon, leading them to refer to him as their master. As Diaz attempted to move the earth dragon, he found the task challenging due to the creature's immense size, likening it to a troublesome giant tortoise. Consequently, he sought the assistance of the villagers who had assembled. By the time they managed to transport the tortoise back to the village, dawn had broken. Upon their arrival, the village chief approached Diaz. She expressed her astonishment at Diaz's solo victory over the earth dragon, especially noting his immunity to the magical miasma that typically debilitated others. She informed him that he would be entitled to retain a significant portion of the materials derived from the earth dragon, acknowledging the material's value exceeded anything the villagers could offer in trade. The compensation proposed included a minor share in the processing of the carcass to extract valuable materials, sufficient building supplies for an additional yurt, and provisions. She hinted at the possibility of constructing an extra yurt for storing the materials. She believed that the materials would attract traders to the village and suggested establishing a trading partnership for the benefit of Diaz's fiefdom. The conversation then shifted to the exchange of wedding gifts with Aruna. The chief indicated that even a single nail from the earth dragon would greatly please Aruna's parents, causing confusion for Diaz. He inquired further about this exchange, to which the chief explained the importance of securing marital ties. She emphasized that without such ties, Diaz's reputation as a dragon slayer could lead to fear and discord among the villagers. The chief's words highlighted the need for Diaz to consider the broader implications of his actions on his relationship with the village and its inhabitants. The chief then suggested to Diaz that he should reflect on the display of masculinity he had shown by defeating a dragon. She pointed out that by sparing Aruna's life, all the young women in the village would eagerly seek his affection in any way possible. She expressed her curiosity about whether he could manage such attention on his own, considering that until then, the maidens had been restrained, knowing that a man in the kingdom was allowed only one wife and they presumed Aruna would be that wife. The protagonist inquired whether the chief was implying he had no option but to marry Aruna, despite his preference to be engaged first. The chief clarified that their village did not practice the custom of engagement, and Aruna had already informed her parents about her marriage plans. The chief believed it was ultimately Diaz's decision to determine when to formalize the marriage, suggesting this might be the compromise he needed. Thus, the marriage between Diaz and Aruna was established, leaving no room for Diaz to object, especially since he found Aruna very attractive. He noted her excellent housekeeping skills and her affection towards him, making him consider that marrying her might not be a bad idea, especially since he was already 35 and it was high time he thought about settling down. When he inquired about Aruna's age, a villager informed him she was just 15 this winter, a revelation that made Diaz conscious of their significant age difference, likening it to a father-daughter relationship. However, since the kingdom's law set the minimum age for marriage at 18, the marriage could not happen until she reached that age, meaning their engagement would last for the next 3 years. During this time, Diaz hoped to adjust to the idea, aiming to become an exemplary feudal lord. Yet, he soon realized that simply getting used to the idea was insufficient. He needed to fully commit to his role and to Aruna. A month into their engagement, significant progress had been made in their fiefdom, including the construction of a well and a storehouse, marking the improvement of their living standards. Diaz pondered how to increase the population of his fiefdom, though he humorously considered counting Aruna not just as a subject of the fief but more appropriately as family, despite the current total population being just the two of them. While Diaz was deep in thought about expanding his realm, Aruna approached him with news that would change their lives forever. They were expecting a baby. This revelation filled the protagonist with joy. Upon entering his home, Diaz was overjoyed to find that Francois was indeed pregnant, which led him to suspect that Francis might be feeling jealous, seeing his wife receiving all the attention due to her pregnancy. According to what Aruna had shared, the Mies were creatures of great intelligence, capable of understanding human speech. This intellect and the wisdom that accompanied it enabled them to thrive in their harsh environment. Even wild Mies had the ability to grasp human language, which, after about a week, surprisingly shed light on how these intelligent beings had become domesticated. It was their own choice to seek the protection, care, and sustenance from humans, leading to their domestication. However, Aruna brought to Diaz's attention that the pregnancy of a Mies was not entirely good news. Despite their intelligence, Mies were prone to fear, especially when pregnant, and there had been instances where the stress had been fatal. They were most reassured by the presence of the strongest member of their group, which, in this case, was Diaz himself. Thus, it was crucial for Diaz to be with them as much as possible to help manage their anxiety, especially during the night. When Diaz inquired if his presence meant sleeping alongside them, Aruna clarified that integrating them into their living quarters was an option, though it was met with resistance from many due to the potential mess and smell and the discomfort some felt under the constant gaze of the meat. Nevertheless, Diaz assured Aruna that such arrangements wouldn't bother him, emphasizing the importance of family, including Francis and Francois, and their offspring. Aruna expressed her appreciation for Diaz's kindness and masculinity. Suddenly, Ami's scream caught their attention. Aruna explained that each scream had subtle differences, indicating different meanings. Although Diaz couldn't decipher these sounds, Aruna seemed to understand them, interpreting that the Mies were asking for privacy in their love life. This led to a conversation about the importance of spending quality time together as a couple. In the midst of this, Aruna's horn emitted a colored light, marking the first time Diaz had witnessed such a phenomenon. Aruna revealed that the light was a response to magical wards she had placed, indicating an approaching threat from the east, though she couldn't identify who or what it was. Despite this, they appeared to be humans on horseback. Understanding the significance of the green radiance and the direction it came from, Diaz decided to investigate. Considering the possibility of bandits and the threat they could pose, he asked Aruna to use her magic to conceal them, reassuring the Mies of his return. Despite facing a group of 10, Diaz was confident. Comparing the threat to dragons he had faced before, Aruna's faith in Diaz was evident as she prepared for his departure. Without further ado, Diaz set out with his axe, ready to confront the unknown, finding a group that included 3 on horseback and 4 on foot. Diaz remembered that Aruna had told him about 10 people, but he thought she might have counted the horses they were riding too. He wondered if these people were friends or enemies, but felt that they were probably not friends, especially if they had bows, which would make things difficult. So, he decided he needed to deal with them quickly. But before he could do anything, a man called out to him. This man, who Diaz then remembered as Klaus, told him it had been a long time since they last met. Diaz knew Klaus from before. He was a good friend who didn't care that Diaz had grown up poor and without parents. Klaus was someone Diaz could really depend on when things got tough. Diaz was really happy to see Klaus and asked him what he was doing there. Klaus said he was working as a guide and protector for some well-dressed people who had something they wanted to ask Diaz. Just then, a lady and some girls came over, making Diaz curious about who they were and what they wanted from him.